What I wish my father taught me was how to solve some of life's basic problems. And in today's lecture series, I'm going to be giving you some of the simple methods and examples of how you and I can adopt and adapt um, each experience we have and find a more strategic or simple way of dealing with what may be an overwhelming experience or problem. Now, you and I have a unique advantage, meaning that we, amongst all life forms, we are the only life form that have been given this unique ability to operate with something called the free will. And that free will gives us the ability to choose, the ability at any point in time in our lives to make a decision, to make a choice. If you look throughout the whole animal kingdom, most of the other animals operate by what's called the instinct and the genetic code. You and I, on the other hand, we've been blessed. We've been blessed with not just the ability to choose, but we've been blessed with the ability to even recreate the life that we want. So we've been given something called the mind. And in our mind, we have the intellect and we have emotions. And therefore, when things happen, we don't have to go through the same process over and over again. We can detect through emotions that the experience was not pleasing. And as a result of that, we can use our intellect to decide how we want to navigate and move forward. And that means that in our mind, using our intellectual faculties, for example, imagination, we can create the future that we would prefer to experience. With our intellectual faculty of reason, we can set up a process of combining thoughts and taking that idea in our imagination and finding a solution and a pathway on how we can get there. With our intellectual faculty of our will, we can hold on to that idea so passionately without wavering in faith. We can stay focused because your willpower, the power of your will is simply the part of your intellectual faculty that allows you to stay focused. Now, with our memory, we can remind ourselves of the painful experience, which most animals do not have. So sometimes you might see maybe some animals who go through the same pain and they can't distinguish between the experience they had previously and what they're going through, about to go through, simply because they don't have the level of our memory. They do have a memory. So some animals, if you punish them, they won't repeat the same mistake again. Some others just do the same thing over and over again. You and I, on the other hand, have this unique intellectual faculty called our memory, meaning we can hold on to a memory of the pain from the past, and we can also hold on to memory of success from the past. And therefore, we can use our memory as a way of reminding us of what we did right or reminding us what we did wrong that we shouldn't do again, so that we don't experience the same outcome. And finally, we have our intuition, which is the part of us which allows us to connect within, connect to the spiritual part of us, connect to that intelligence in each and every one of us, and then we can find answers. So what I wish my father had taught me was how to solve some of life's problems. I'm going to use 3 or 4 different methods, very simple methods to share and to show you how you can navigate through whatever problem that you might be facing or that you might face in the future. The first is what I call the principle of elimination. The principle of elimination. I struggled for a number of years in trying to understand the purpose and the meaning of life. It's still a question that intrigues me and somewhat, in many cases, even intimidates me, because I still do not have one answer that I think is universal. I think I found some answers that have been useful and instructive to me, but I'm finding that as I learn every day, I'm starting to grow in this meaning, is becoming more awakened. But one of the things I had to learn was something called the process of elimination. Now, this is how it works. Most people struggle with the question, who am I? As in, who am I in life? And it's such a difficult question. It's such a tough question for anyone to try to answer, especially if you're quite young. Now, if you're much older, perhaps you've had the opportunity of going through your teens, you've gone through your 20s and you're in your 30s or 40s or much older, you've been able to experience life. So you have an idea about what makes life meaningful. Now, if you're quite young, like I was when I started to have this question, I hadn't had the experience of life to be able to say, well, I know that works and I know that this doesn't work. So the question I always used to ask myself is, who am I? That was difficult. It was difficult to identify myself, especially within a social context. I found that by using the process of elimination, by turning the question around, I was able to allow myself the freedom of coming up with 3 or 4, sometimes more, qualities that I thought were useful in how I define myself. So the process of elimination is simply where you simply start by looking at the opposite side of the coin, by saying, who am I not? So think about this. You might start off and you might say, I can't define who I am. I find it difficult to define who I am. I would bet that if I sat with you and I'd asked you to describe to me or define to me who you are not, that you would find the process so easy. So you might start off by saying, well, I'm not a cheat. I'm not a thief. I'm not dishonest. You might say, I'm not this, I'm not that. By elimination, what you find is that you're left with a short handful of possible character traits or options for you. Now, this applies to any area of life, in principle, any general area of life. You go into a restaurant, they give you a menu. The menu has 10 different meals. What would you like? Well, one of the things we struggle with is choice. We have too many options now. We have a dilemma now because we're confused about what to choose. Well, if you flip it around and just simply say, I'm going to use the principle of elimination. Rather than me trying to choose one, let me exclude what doesn't work. Let me exclude what shouldn't be in this particular menu. So you might say, number 10, I don't want to have seafood. That goes out. Number 9, well, I don't want to have burger. That goes out. By eliminating what you do not want, you're left with some possible choices of what you do want. So it makes it a lot easier to then make a choice, make a decision. That way you're not burdened with the pressure of thinking you have to choose 1 out of 10. I'll give you a good example. Perhaps you're young. You have someone you find attractive, someone to date. You have options. Whether you're a boy or you're a girl, whether you're a man or a woman, you have options. Who do I choose? Well, in many cases, you could eliminate simply by saying, who do I not want? So easy. So rather than saying I have to go through the process of choosing 1, you simply say, no, I'm going to eliminate those who are not supposed to be on the short list. You might find actually you reduce the entire option list by more than 80%. So you're left with 20%, and then it's easier for you to then say, I can make a choice between 1, 2, or 3. The process of elimination works in every area of life. In business, you have a contract, you have contractors that have bid for a project. You're wondering who you should award the contract. Elimination. Who is not deserving? Who hasn't made the short list? Who doesn't meet the minimum criteria? You eliminate them. Then you move to the next stage. So the process of elimination is very, very interesting. It's very important, but it's also very simple. Sometimes defining yourself from the perspective of who you are not is much easier than trying to define yourself from the perspective of who you are. So in any area of your life, whenever you run into a problem, try using the process of elimination. Try asking yourself, what is the opposite of this? Now, linked to this first principle is the second principle. It's called the principle of inversion. In many ways, they're quite similar. Not the same, but quite similar. Inversion is simply saying you turn something upside down. So, for example, if you say, I want to solve a mathematical equation, you can use the inversion. What is the inverse to this particular problem? Meaning, I'll give you a good example. You might say, well, if I want to let's use a good example. If I want to make an investment and I'm not sure about what the right result might be, or the right choice I should make, you invert the question. You invert the question. By inversing the question, it helps you think from a different perspective. So rather than thinking from the top down, it helps you think from the bottom up. So inversion is simply a process of looking at things from a different perspective. Different perspective. So wherever you are in any area of life, whenever you run into a challenge or difficulty where a decision has to be made, simply invert the question, invert the problem. Rather than look at it from one perspective, turn it upside down and look at it from top down or from bottom up, depending on where your first point of position is. It's like a coin. I like to use the analogy of a coin. I say every coin has 3 sides, not 2. Now, I know you may have thought about a 2-sided coin. There is no such thing as a 2-sided coin. Every coin has 3 sides. You have the heads, you have the tail, and then you have the edge. And you and I, by using the process of inversion, you're trying to allow yourself to stand on the edge of the coin. Standing on the edge of the coin allows you to see both perspectives, both sides of the coin. And in many cases, if you're on one side of the coin, all you see is one perspective. So if you were with someone and they were on the right side of the coin and all you could see was the heads, they would tell you, that's all I can see. We usually say, well, that's the lens through which you see life. So whenever you encounter a problem, recognize that immediately the problem occurs, or at the point at which you have to make a decision, always ask yourself the question, what lens am I using to look at this problem? If you move to the opposite side, you find actually it's a 2 perspective you have on the coin, that you can change your perspective, and by changing your perspective, you change how you anticipate, how you react, perhaps even how you respond to whatever life has thrown your way. So the process of inversion simply means look through a different perspective. Mark Twain said that nothing is either right or wrong, but our thinking makes it so. So you can meet one person and they think, well, I can't solve this problem. Another person comes along and says, you know what? If I invert this problem, I can look at this problem from a different perspective, and therefore I can see things that I couldn't see before. I'll give you a good example. I learned something that I thought was very, very, very simple, but also very, very, very easy. Life-changing. Here it was. I used to have this flawed philosophy that I couldn't learn from everyone. Now, you and I can learn from everyone. I don't know who said this, but I've always held on to it. I think it was Abraham Lincoln. I could be wrong, but I know it was one of the well-known American former presidents. And he said, I don't like that man, so I must get to know him. That's a very powerful statement. I don't like that person, so I must get to know them. And in many ways, when we don't like someone, if there's something we don't like, we abstain. We keep it at arm's length. But Abraham Lincoln was saying, no. If I don't like him, it's not about him. It's about me. There's something in me that is bringing to my awareness something that perhaps needs a different perspective. So I'm going to get to know him. And by getting to know him, I'm not going to judge him for my perspective and for my principles. Rather, by getting to know him, I can judge him from his own principles. That's a powerful thing that you have to understand. By using inversion, what you're simply trying to say is, do you know what? I can learn from everyone. Back in the day, I used to have this very silly and childish, flawed philosophy, which was I could only learn from a certain group of people. And for so many years, I struggled. And the reason was because you can't learn from someone that you either don't admire. You can't learn from someone that you either have less honor for. You can't learn from someone that you believe is not good enough. All of those ideologies are false. You can learn from everyone. You can learn from success. You can learn from failure. Now, you might be thinking, how do you learn from success? Well, if I had a choice, Now hear this very carefully. If I had a choice, and if I could, I would rather go to seminars, and I would rather pay to go to seminars where I can listen to people who had failed in life, people who had done things and failed. Do you know why? Because success is a very poor teacher. Speak to anyone who has had any level of success, and you have had a series of successes in your life. Success leaves behind clues, yes, but it's a terrible teacher. Failure, on the other hand, is a better teacher because failure tells you what you could have done right. Success, on the other hand, is so quick that you can't really, it doesn't allow you to stop and reflect and say, this is what I did. So I would rather go to seminars where people who have failed share their experiences. Why? Because they can tell me what they did wrong and what they would do differently. That's very, very important. Brian Tracy used to say, at the end of every day, ask yourself 2 questions. What did I do right? That's one side of the equation. Secondly, what could I have done differently? That is the opposite side of the equation. So I would pursue failure. Now, most people don't realize failure is packaged. Napoleon Hill said that hidden in every adversity are the seeds of an equal or greater advantage. I would invert failure in order to find the success seeds. So by studying someone who has failed, I can say to myself, that's not how to live. Or I can say to myself, avoid X, Y, and Z. We learn in life in 2 ways. We learn through our mistakes and we learn through mentors. Learning through mentors is extremely important. Those mentors don't have to be success mentors. They could be failure mentors. Learning through your mistakes is more costly because you now have to invest time, you have to invest emotion, energy, and in many cases is that trial and error approach where you try something and it doesn't work and then you try again. Whereas if you go straight to someone who has done it and who's failed, or who's done it and who's succeeded, you can still learn. The person who's failed can say, listen, if I had my life to live all over again, I would avoid X, Y, Z, and this is why. And he tells you, or she tells you, they paint you a picture of pain and sadness and sorrow and tragedy, missed opportunities and adversity, and you can feel, you can hear, and you can feel, and you can sense the aura of regret. That might scare you enough into realizing, I don't want to go down this path. So usually, whenever I have an opportunity to speak to young boys, I usually say to them, one of the best things you can do for yourself, especially those who are still in their very, very mid-teens, who are quite susceptible to peer pressure on gangs, I often say to them, listen, one of the best things you can do for yourself is go to a prison. Go to the prison and go visit some of the inmates and let them tell you their stories. Go see someone who's been sentenced to perhaps life in prison. Go see someone who's been there perhaps for 30, 40 years and let them tell you their experience. And I can bet you this, they will tell you whatever you do not come here because it's not nice. Let them scare you a little bit. Let them frighten you with their stories of failure and pain and regret and sadness. So you can see that the life you're trying to emulate outside is probably not the life for you. That is a process of inversion. You invert the experience. So learning from failures is important. One of the things I wish I had learned was, number 1, how to use the process of elimination, and number 2, how to use the process of inversion. You can learn by observation, you can learn from experience, but more importantly, you can learn by inversion. Number 3, how to solve life's problems. Number 3, questions. Questions. I had wished my father had taught me the power of questions. The quality of the questions you ask determines the quality of your life. Now, I know that sounds simplistic. It's so easy for anyone to say, well, if you want to change your life, change the questions you're asking. It sounds too easy. It sounds like a cliched question or statement, but here is the point I'm trying to make. Questions determine results and answers. So in every area of your life where you think, I could be struggling, I could do things differently, I need answers. I'm looking for answers. I'm searching for answers, because each and every one of us is searching for answers. We're searching for a better way of life. We're searching for growth and development and peace and happiness and joy, fulfillment and success. We're always in the pursuit for answers, for more. How do you find answers? Well, think about this. Let me use this example. Think about a pendulum. A pendulum swings, and let's assume that on one side of a pendulum is success, and on the other side is failure. Likewise, on one side is answers. If you try to swing on the side of success or the side of the answers, it's much more difficult in life. It's easy to swing in the direction of failure, in the direction of questions. By swinging in the direction of failure, what you find is the pendulum swings both sides. The tide goes out and the tide comes back in. The pendulum swings to the left, and the momentum will allow it to swing back in the same proportion to the right. A stationary pendulum trying to force your way through success is harder. That's why most people say aim for failure. Forget about success. Swing towards failure. Swing towards failure and do it hard. Do it quickly and do it frequently. Fail forward. Fail. Get up, try again, fail. Fail intelligently, fail smartly, but keep failing. And by swinging towards failure, what you find, you build momentum, and someday you swing all the way up, and it allows you to swing all the way back to a success. If you want to find answers to life, questions allow you to find answers, because every single answer in life is hidden inside a question. This is so beautiful and so simple. That's the reason why the ancient proverb said, except you become like a child in your way of thinking, you cannot find the kingdom. What is the kingdom? The kingdom is happiness and joy and beauty and peace and patience and love. Why does the proverb use kids as a reference? Because children are very curious. They're always asking questions. What is this? Why? What is that? Why? What does it do? Why? You get on a train and you're running late, and for some reason you're with a child, and the train stops. The train doesn't move for 2 minutes. The adult gets upset, fearful, worried. The child gets curious. He gets inquisitive. He starts to ask questions. I wonder why we've stopped here. Well, look outside the door. Look outside the window. There's a farm. What is that farm for? You have to become passionately curious about life if you're able, and if you're going to be able to solve life's problem. That passion and that curiosity begins with a question. So the quality of your life and the quality of my life is a reflection of the quality of the questions we ask. Interestingly, in my relationships, whenever I meet people, the first thing I do is I listen to their questions. Because the question someone asks is a way of, they reveal their IQ, they reveal their emotional intelligence, they reveal a part of who they are, they reveal a part of their mind, they reveal a part of their thinking. So you can know people very quickly by simply listening to the questions they ask. Now here's also what's very, very interesting. Those who ask more questions usually have a lot more interest. They have more passion. They're more excited. They show a level of excitement, willingness to learn. Now here's an interesting analysis. I'm going to segue away from problems so you can see how this beautiful, simple principle applies to your life. If you go into, let's assume in business, you're about to award a project. You put it out there. A lot of contractors and clients or participants have tendered for the project. They said, we can do this project for you, we can do it well. You open up perhaps the tendering process and you say, okay, do you know what? I'll meet with all of you. And you can ask me whatever you want. Listen and pay attention to those who ask you more questions. Those who don't ask questions, assuming they know everything about the project and they know everything about you. Now, how can they know everything about you and the project, with the exception of the information you provided, without asking you a question? So some people might take the tender document and say, great, we can do that, no problem. Another contractor might say, do you know what? We've read the tender document. We understand it. We believe we can provide you with a great service. But let me ask you a few questions. What is your real vision? I know you've described it in this text, and it's intelligently written, but what is your true vision? What is it you're trying to achieve? How would success look like? How would you know that we've delivered a project well? You answer the question. They say, well, we're sorry to ask another question. We have a company, we have our values. Can you tell us a little bit about your company and your values? Because if we understand your values, we think our team can work better with your team, and we can integrate very well, and we can work as one team as opposed to two separate entities. And then you explain, and they say, great. Can we ask another question? You've described what you want to achieve. You've described how we should do the project, but we have some experience, and we've done this so many times. Would you be open to doing it slightly differently? And here are the advantages. We can save you costs, we can add more value, we can reduce time, we can reduce the risk. And then you as the client are thinking, wow, these people are bringing a lot to the table. And they say, can we ask you another question? Questions reveal passion. Questions reveal intelligence. They reveal IQ. They reveal inspiration and motivation, willingness. If you want to solve life's problems, start by asking a question. You can do this in your relationships. I usually say to people, when you meet people that you want to be intimate with, listen to the questions they ask you. If they don't ask questions, now this is not a generic position, it's applied to me. You have to understand people. Some people are introverts and some are extroverts. So you can't just use this as a one way of saying if they don't do this, then they're not really interested. No, it's multidimensional. But the quality of the questions they ask, their passion and their curiosity shows interest. If you look through history, I'm going to say something that might sound a little bit controversial, but if you look through history, whenever you've seen a really, really powerful, successful woman, Cleopatra, the Queen of Sheba, all of the women who were very influential and who influenced a lot of men, apart from their beauty, put their beauty aside, because there were a lot of beautiful women at that time, what they had was they had this curiosity, and they could ask questions. They could intrigue a man, or they could intrigue a nation by using their thought process and weaving a story and asking questions. And by doing that, they made you more exciting. They came across as more interesting. And you know what? If you can capture people's interest, people will come back, because people are looking for people who are exciting and interesting and who, like children, are curious and happy and fun. So to solve life's problems, ask questions. Let's make it practical. Let's say, for example, you get your bank statement, and you're looking at your bank statement, and the balance in your bank says that you have just £20 left. You have a job, you work. Looking at the £20 left, you might ask the question, why do I have £20 left? Well, the reason is because you spent all the money. Okay, what did I spend all the money on? Why did I spend the money? What do I have to do to ensure that I have £40 next month? What could I do to reduce my expenses? What could I do to increase my income? Who could I go to teach me a little bit more about personal finance? The more you ask questions, the answers come. So questions reveal intent and your reason for wanting something. Answers are the rewards that come after the reasons. So reasons come first, the rewards and the answers come afterwards. So number 3 in how to solve life's problems is questions. Get really, really good at asking questions. And here is what's interesting. Don't worry too much about whether the questions you're asking are intelligent questions. Start with the dumb questions, but just ask. Ancient scripture, ancient proverb says, ASK. Ask, seek, and knock. Now, there's a meaning behind that beautiful proverb. Ask, and you would receive. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. What that demonstrates is that whatever you want in life is not going to be freely handed over to you. The mistake I made when I was growing up was to think, if I'm a good person, if I'm sincere, if I'm honest, if I have integrity, the life will give me everything I want. No, it doesn't happen that way. Like a beautiful diamond is hidden. It's hidden away from the eyes of everyone who can see it. Those who are passionate have to go digging. Ask means that the information you want is contained or hidden in someone else's understanding. So ask means you're not going to get anything until you go out of your comfort zone, until you shed off all of your, pride, until you become humble and say, I don't know this. I'm going to ask someone. And the biggest mistake most of us make is we're too proud. We're too proud to go and ask other people. So ask simply means you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone and go seek. Go talk to someone. Now, when you ask, it doesn't say you're going to get what you want every time. It says the next stage, A-S-K, ask. If you don't get it, next, seek. Seek means to search for with passion and intent. Not look. Seek is not looking. Seek simply means there's something you want and you've got to look purposefully. You're going to look strategically. You're going to have to uncover. You're searching, you're looking around. That's seeking. What that means is that what you're looking for, the answers you want sometimes, is hidden. It's hidden away from you. Why are few people successful? Why are few people happy? Why are few people healthy? Why are few people living the good life? Because most people are willing to ask. Fewer of those are willing to seek. Oh, I went to the gym for 2 weeks and nothing changed. Well, you didn't seek. Because there are people who have been there for 6 months and 2 years who are still seeking, paying the price. And then one day, boom, they find the treasure. So you must be willing to seek. And number 3, when you seek, eventually, imagine you come into a city of London. Let's use the city of London as an example. You arrive in the city of London. I'll use myself as a good example. When I came from Africa, West Africa, to this island of Great Britain, in pursuit of a dream, I had my vision. I knew my dream. I knew what I wanted. I knew the goals I had to go through to achieve it. But I didn't know how I was going to get there. I knew from the start that what that meant was I had to leave my environment, that where I was limiting me, that I couldn't get to where I would love to be, I wanted to be, except I left my present environment. I said, okay, I'm going to go look for opportunities.